Hey there guys, and welcome back to another video. I'm Xterminator, and thank you for joining me again. And today we're going to be doing a bit of something different. It is a spotlight slash tutorial for a Factorio Calculator. And I was actually inspired to do this just probably about an hour ago because I saw a comment on one of my videos on the most recent Community Friday Facts video where they mentioned this particular calculator. Someone made a comment saying that they wish the calculator did something, and I looked into it and found that you actually can do what the person was requesting, and it made me realize maybe it would be worth making a tutorial and spotlight for this calculator. So this is the Kirk McDonald calculator. This was mentioned in the latest Community Friday Facts, Alt F4, number 4, which I did do a video of, and it's a really, really cool tool. It's one I've used in the past. There are other calculators for the game. There's at least 2 others I know of, and they each, between those 2 and this one, all 3 of them, and there's probably more out there, all 3 plus of them have, different layouts, different tools, some pros and cons to each. Maybe I'll do a spotlight for others as well, but this is one I've personally used. This is one I really like and I have experience with, and I think it's just very nice and actually more versatile than you may realize initially. And this is great because this is for anyone from new players to people, super experienced people who want to build megabases, because this can just help you calculate out very simple ratios up to massive megabases if you want to do that. So this I think is great for new and super experienced players alike. So how does this work? Well, we go in here, and there's a few tabs. We have Factory, Visualize, Settings, FAQ, and About. Under Settings is probably what you will want to mess with before you set anything. So if we come to Settings, you want to set your recipe. You could do one of the other, because when you go to create a map, there is an option to set expensive recipes, but obviously by default you don't have that, so we want vanilla 1.0. Color scheme, you can change it to this or printer friendly. I personally much prefer this, but if you wanted to print it, you could do that. It's very ugly to actually look at on your screen though. Display rates, you can change to per second rate, per minute, or per hour. I go with per minute because that's just typically what it's calculated at least in my experience. Rate precision, this is just how precise, on a per minute rate you are. There's actually not really a tooltip for this, and same with factory precision. I just leave these default. It seems to work perfectly fine for me, but if someone else has more experience messing with these 2 settings and can, provide more information, that'd be cool. And then minimum assembler machine level. So this is important because this is going to vastly change your display numbers for assemblers and things produced. You have 3 options, and they're just the options that are in the game. And basically what this is saying is, what level of assembler are you on? Do you want this to use for all these calculations? So obviously if you're early game, it's going to be this one, and then whatever one you're using or want to use for the particular things you're calculating, make sure you set it to these. I'm going to go ahead and select number 2 because typically, that's what I like to kind of sit on for quite some time. I get to those usually around mid-game. Preferred furnaces, I actually don't use electric furnaces a ton, so I'm going to actually go with stone smelters. That's pretty, early game-ish, we'll see. Fuel, you can change the fuel that you would like to use. I'm going to use coal, that's pretty typical. Oil processing recipe is advanced oil. You can change this to normal or coal liquefaction. The belt level you want to use, minimum pipe length, and basically the length of the pipe here, it's covered in the FAQ, is going to determine how many pipe lines you need to run things due to pipe throughput. We'll look at the FAQ and we'll explain that slightly better. Default modules, if you want to set these. If you're doing megabase stuff, this would be good to set. For what I'm going to show, at least right this minute, I'm just going to leave these blank. And then recipe sort order, topological or alphabetical. Format values as decimals or rationales. I'll just leave them as decimals. So there we go. That's what we have this set to. FAQ. So there's some very important notes here, guys. The numbers, because this confuses a lot of people. This confused me a lot when I started using this calculator. And I think this was before it was in an FAQ. This section here is really important. I'll explain it when we get there. But it's worth noting that when we take into account beacons, that they are calculated a little bit different than you may expect, that they represent the number of modules. This may seem kind of confusing right now, but it'll make much more sense when I show it. And then what does clicking on items icon do in the factory tab? So this basically omits that. If you want to, they have a good example here. So if you're making an advanced circuit factory and you want to ship in electronic circuits rather than having them made there, you can just kind of omit that from the calculations, since you're already making it elsewhere. And then the pipe number on the factory tab, which kind of corresponds with the settings, is pipe throughput is inversely proportional to the length of the pipe. This means that the longer a pipe is, the more parallel lanes of pipes will be required. So this is kind of minimum pipe length you want to build. I usually leave this stuff default for the most part and just change these. So if we go over here to factory, I've set this. You can clear things by clicking this button, or you can add things by clicking this. And this allows you, it'll just default to something. I guess in this case it's red circuits, but if you click on it, you can search, or you can just look through every single item in the game, which is very, very nice. I'm going to clear this temporarily. And you can set this two ways. You can either set it by the number of factories you want, and then the rate will be determined based on that amount of factories and the speed of those factories. Or, probably more typically, you can base it on a rate. So let's just say 60 a minute, which is an average of 1 per second, which is usually what I calculate for. Keeping in mind, this is actually taking into account the assembler craft speed, whereas usually when I calculate ratios, I go off of base craft rate. But if you want to get super exact, and you're probably doing this type of calculator, then you do want to take into account the assembler speed. And this is what it gives us. And this is super nice because this breaks down everything. So it starts with the highest level thing, meaning the in product, and says how much we want to make based on this, how many belts we're going to be producing, which is, a tenth of a red belt, 60 a minute tenth of a yellow belt, 60 a minute is a tenth of a yellow belt. It's going to take 6.7 factories. Obviously you can't build that, so I would just round up for sure. Even if it says like 6.1, I would still round up to 7. Otherwise, you're going to have slight underproduction if you kept it at 6. These are module slots. You can put in the modules. For this particular example, we're just going to leave that blank. I will show you modules in a minute. Same with the beacons. And then this says how much power that's going to take. Then this shows how much copper you need, how much copper ore you need, how much gears, iron. You'll notice the iron is double because gears take 2 iron ore, and coal. And this is this is all a per minute rate, since we are basing this off of per minutes. So we need 120 iron a minute, 60 copper a minute. This is how many belts it's going to fill or take to reach this. And this tells you the machines. And this is just pretty straightforward, I would say. Now it does get obviously a lot more complicated and convoluted when you start adding more and more items. If we open this up, this just is like another tab, essentially. Open this item in a separate window. So if you have a bunch of different initial items, you can open them in separate windows, which is quite nice. So if we say, for example, want to not go off of this, let's just say we want 10 assemblers doing this. It's just going to base it now on the assemblers. So if we say 10, this is going to give us a rate of 90 a minute, and it will base all the calculations off this, which is pretty awesome. And then you can go ahead and change things. So I can click that, and click plot copper plate to just omit that, or bring it back in. Same with gears. Click it again to bring it back in. Total power, it shows here. If we click visualize, this is quite nice. This gives us a nice visualization here, which you can change settings in here. But this is just very cool. You can see we have miners on coal, miners on iron. Very easy to follow that the coal just comes straight through here. Iron comes here with the coal, combines. It shows these rates. It's just very, very nice. I didn't actually really have this when I used it the very first time a long time ago. And then it shows the output. So this is very nice. Now, let's say we want to add, let's do 100 a minute. But let's say we want to add more science packs. And it's just, I don't know why it's defaulting to these values, but we can go ahead and change them. Let's say, for example, let's just get crazy. And let's say we want to do every single pack in the game at a rate of 100 a minute. Seems... Oh, clicked the wrong thing there. We can go ahead and just keep adding these and changing them. And I'm just for the moment going to ignore all this stuff down here until I set everything that I need to set. Let's not do space science for the moment. So if we just set these all to 100 a minute, so they're all creating at the same speed. Here we go. Okay, so we have all the science here, and it's pretty crazy. But you can, if you wanted to just open these sciences individually, you could certainly do that. If you could go into settings, and maybe if we range this alphabetically, this would change things. Not particularly. Okay, so this is a little bit hard to read. I thought it would group all the sciences at the top. But we can take a look here. Red science, green science. And we have the inserters and the belts for green science. And it, again, just saying it's complicated, obviously, much more so, but it's still the same general layout. You know, it's showing us how many machines we need for each of these things, how much power that's going to take. Again, for this, we won't use modules. The next thing I'll show you will use modules and beacons. Then we have military, you know, taking all these resources. So it looks like it's going from, like, least complicated to most complicated in a way. Of course, minus the ores. So this is how much of these things we need for military. And, you know, this is how many machines, etc. Same with blue science, purple science. Pretty self-explanatory. You know, if we scroll down to yellow science, we need 15.6 assemblers. And then it does take into account liquids as well, which is quite nice. So that's very nice. Now these pipe numbers, basically kind of like it said here in the FAQ, is how do I interpret the pipe numbers? So say the solution calls for 7,500 units of heavy oil per second with the default minimum pipe length setting. The calculator will display the value as pipe times 7 less than or equal to 47. This means you will need 7 parallel lines of pipes, each with a maximum length of 47 segments. So the minimum pipe length section controls the minimum number of segments that a pipe will be permitted before the calculator uses multiple lanes of pipes. Default 17 corresponds to a fluid rate of 1,200 a second. So, I mean, this kind of, you can just basically do this calculation to get the amount of actual parallel lines of pipes you'll need. You would then input these numbers here. But this still shows the things you need, even shows the pump. And it's pretty nice. This to make 100 of all those packs will take about 155.2 megawatts. If we go up to visualize, things do get a bit more complicated, but you can still kind of start from the beginning-ish and just follow it through, though it does obviously get quite a lot more complicated. You can scroll over here. And there we go. Now, if we were to omit something like the military science and go to visualize, it looks like it is still showing it here potentially. Let's see, 351 iron. Okay, no, it did actually take it out. It showed it at the end, but the number did change, so it did omit that from the actual calculation. And that's pretty nice. So this, you know, it's just very nice to calculate this out. Now, let me show you here, to close this out, let me show you how these beacons and modules work, and also to cover the thing that the viewer in my Community Friday Facts video commented on what they wanted. In fact, let me just cover that first. So what the comment said, I'm actually going to read it here, just because, again, this was kind of the inspiration for this video. They basically said their request would be to allow for manual overrides. So for instance, you could tell it you want X amount of each science pack for your base, but you want to round up things like steel, green circuits, red circuits, and a few other things because it's starter base. It's a starter base build and it needs to support additional mass construction abilities. Or maybe you're on a death world and you want to add additional ammo production on top of what your military science needs. And while you cannot edit the factories themselves, just like in here. You can edit them here, which does get kind of wonky, but to achieve what this commenter is asking, let's actually take their example and say we have military science and we want to make it at, let's just say 60 a minute. If you want to focus heavily on like defense or pushing out biters and you want to take into account within the calculator additional red ammo past what is required for this, while you can't add in factories here, what you can do is, since you can add any item in the game here, we can just add, and this should achieve, if I'm understanding correctly the question, this should achieve what you want. So let's just say on top of what we want to produce for that, let's say we want to add in another, let's just say 50 red ammo a minute to be made in our factory. This is going to add this into the calculation. So you can see here, it's going to take 3.4 factories, and it just did add this to here. You know, this was 40, but it's now added it to here, and it should have, I'm pretty sure it did bump up all these numbers. So if we, you know, recall some of these, like 870, let's do steel because it takes steel, 80 of this, and say 400 copper, we get rid of this, you can see it did reduce all these numbers. So if you wanted to add in specific things, like say, you know, you calculate all your science packs, and let's just say you want like additional belts made to, you know, maybe, you know, we could even do that right now. Let's just say you have green science being made at 60 a minute, but let's say you want extra belt made to put into a box to just have for yourself, you know, to place belt. Let's say we want 100 a minute. We can just add this in right here, and it will add this to the total calculation. Everything you're going to need, the belts you're going to need, etc. So this is quite nice. You know, it takes 0.6 factories for this, but then it takes 0.3 factories for the belt, since 0.6 plus 0.3 would equal 0.9. So it is taking this into account within all the calculations. So that is, I believe, would achieve what you're asking. Now, lastly, to show off modules and beacons. So a great example of this would be like, let's say smelting. Let's say you want to build a megabase and you want to make 5,000 iron a minute. Okay, and let's actually change this to electric furnaces, since obviously stone furnaces cannot take modules. And it did obviously just update here. No need to refresh or anything. This is going to, and one thing I really like, why I like Kirk McDonald, is because it shows you belts. Some of the other calculators, at least in the past, didn't show you the amount of belts. And if you want to build a belt megabase, you obviously want to know how many belts you're going to be outputting and how many belts you're going to be needing in general for something. And this will just tell you, rather than having to manually calculate it out, this will just tell you straight up, okay, well, this is going to be, you know, 5.6 belts of iron. You know, it's going to take 5.6 belts of ore, and this is just really nice. How many miners it's going to take. So this section for modules is for the machines. The electric furnaces can only take 2 modules, and you can select each slot. So typically for smelting, we would want productivity, and if we change it, it will change this on the fly. You can see when we clear this, it's adding smelters, because productivity alone slows down a machine, which means it's going to take more machines, and it did up or decrease rather the amount of ore we need. If we add a second one, it decreased it further but added more machines, again because it's slowing it down. Now beacons, this is where it gets confusing, and this is what's covered in the FAQ. The modules, you select the module. We would typically want speed modules in our beacons here, and we do this. The number here is the number of modules which will affect this factory. So again, to be clear, this is the number you put in here is not the number of beacons. This is the number of modules, meaning you need to double the amount of beacons and then put that number in here, because each beacon takes 2 modules, right? So if you're doing, say, a typical, well, fairly standard smelting build, there's two standard, I would say, quote unquote standard, you know, max beacon things. It's either 8 beacons or 12 beacons. Each have their pros and cons. Typically, I build my smelters with like 8 beacon layouts. So let's say we have 8 beacons hitting every single furnace, and that's what that means. 8 beacons or 12 beacons is that's how many beacons are actually affecting each machine. If we want to do 8, we need to put 16 in here. Again, because this is not the number of beacons, this is the number of modules. Each beacon takes 2 modules. So if we have 8, it's going to be 16 modules, right? So that gets confusing. Again, it didn't used to be quite, there wasn't really a tooltip here, I don't think, when I first used this a long time ago. So if we put this in, you're going to see these numbers drastically change. Well, they should have anyway. Well, yes, the number out is obviously still going to be the same amount of belts, but look at the number of these furnaces. We went from 158 furnaces to achieve 5,000 a minute, 5.6 belts. If we were to 8 beacon this with 2 speed modules per beacon, we would only need 23 furnaces, which is ridiculous, like just ridiculous, like less. And this is the power of beacons and modules. But this is how this works. Also, the power changed here. It will change based on the modules you put in, so that's you know, something to keep into account. But yeah, so this is actually, it was a little deceiving for me for a second because I had to comprehend this, but the reason this actually went down, you would think by adding modules and beacons it would go up, but the reason this went down is because we reduced the amount of furnaces we needed by so much that it actually reduced the power amount. Because without beacons, this is going to take 74.3 megawatts just for this. Now, if we were to take these out, obviously it would decrease significantly. But again, this is the power of modules and beacons. Without any, it's not taking this into account, but just get rid of it anyway. With no modules, no beacons, it's going to take 133 furnaces and take 24 megawatts is what this is going to take to output that. However, with productivity modules in here and 8 beacon speed modules, it takes 35 megawatts, slightly more than it did, but it only takes 23 furnaces. Okay, and this is, you know, again, this is just same thing, you know, machines, modules, going to work the same way. If we add this, let's just say, let's change this to these guys here. Just to show you that there's now 4 slots because level 3 machines can take 4 modules. Okay, so that's what that does. If you click this and do this, it'll just apply it to all of them, which is really nice. And then again, this would be the amount of modules total, not just the beacons, for red circuits. And you know, you can calculate anything with this. Let's say we want to make 1,000 red circuits a minute on top of this. This is going to take all that into account, etc., etc. With these module beacon setups. You can change this how you'd like, but I think this is plenty long enough. Hopefully this helps you, you know, with this. And like I said, I think this is a great tool for both new players and experienced players, because you can make it as simple or complicated as you'd like, and you can do really almost anything you want with this. Again, you can't just cannot manually edit the machines. I guess here, but you can do it here. So, you know, like the person in my comments asked, let's just say we wanted extra red circuits for something, I don't know, a power armor or multiple power armors, so whatever. If you wanted just extra ones, let's just say we want to add 8 machines to 150 machines. You can change it up here and it changes it here. So that's how you would do that. You can change things how you'd like. You could just add in like another additional thing of circuits if you want, or something like that. So you can pretty much mess with this to whatever degree you want. It's very nice. You can do, you know, you can change all your settings here. You can get the graph, which is super nice. You can print it, printer friendly, you know, which is super good. And yeah, I think here's a CSV for it as well, if you want to mess around with that. And there we go. So I think that's going to do it, guys. I know it was a bit long, but I did want to try to be pretty thorough with this and, you know, let you know everything you can do with this. I'm not entirely sure what that just did, actually, but it's been a long time since I've used this. Yeah, I think this just... It's just apply. Oh, it applies it down the whole way. Duh. So it applies it throughout the entire factory here, basically. But there we go. So 150. This is now 10,000 of these a minute when we do this. But anyway, it takes 1.5 gigawatts. So that's it. Hopefully you found this helpful and enjoyable. If you did have additional questions, do let me know. If there's like super important features or something I left out, please let me know as well. But I think I covered about everything. I think this is a fantastic tool, honestly. I'm not saying the other calculators are bad. This is one I've just personally used. It's one I'm fairly used to, and I just think it works great for almost all applications, particularly the fact it shows belts. It's just extremely nice here. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it. There will, of course, be a link to the calculator. I'll probably just do a blank with no items in here. That's to not confuse people. There will be a link to this in the description. Leave your thoughts below. If you did enjoy and found it helpful, please leave a like. It is much appreciated so other people can find the video as well. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and feel free to subscribe if you aren't already to keep up with all the Factorio content coming out. And let me know if you would like to see more of these type of videos, like if you'd like me to do guides on the other calculators. It may take a while since I don't have as much experience with them, but I would be open to doing that. And I think that's going to do it. Until next time, guys, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.